Welcome back to Hardball. Well, today we saw a blow to the nationwide Republican effort to suppress Democratic turnout. A Pennsylvania judge blocked a strict voter photo ID requirement from going into effect before Election Day. Judge Robert Simpson wrote, in part, I am not still convinced that there will be no voter disenfranchisement arising out of the Commonwealth's implementation of a voter identification requirement for the upcoming election. Well, this was a blow for Pennsylvania Republican governor and the Republican-controlled state legislature that championed it. In fact, the state's House Majority Leader, Mike Turzai, the top Republican, left no doubt what the aim of the law was. Let's listen to him in his own words.
Voter, which is going to allow Governor Romney to win the state of Pennsylvania. Done.
Well, that's pretty authoritative. And State Representative Darrell Metcalf, who authored the Voter ID Act, made clear he had no patience for voters without photo IDs, the new kind. Let's listen.
I don't believe any legitimate voter that actually wants to exercise that right and takes on the according responsibility that goes with that right to secure their photo ID will be disenfranchised. You know, we have, as Mitt Romney said, I mean, what, we have 40-some% of the people that are living off the public dole, living off of their neighbors' hard work, and we have a lot of people out there that are too lazy to get off and to get up and get out there and get the ID they need. So, I mean, if individuals are too lazy, the state can't fix that. But the process is put in place to get an ID card. There's a free ID available if somebody needs one, and there's a process they have to go through. They have to present certain documents. That's the way it should be.
You don't hear it as raw as that more often. You usually hear the dog whistle, but that was pretty clear for both those gentlemen. Ben Jealous is president of the NAACP, who deals with this stuff. He, by the way, took on the voter ID law in Pennsylvania. Jim Burr is the Pennsylvania Democratic Party chair. And also we have Catherine Culleton-Gonzalez. She's director of the Voter Protection Program at the Advancement Project. I know she doesn't outrank either of you gentlemen, but I wanted to start because you're an expert at this. How important is this for the people who are trying to push this through, and how important was it to defeat it in Pennsylvania for this election?
This is huge. This is a great victory, Chris. We're really pleased with it. I mean, the fight is still on. We've got to defeat this in the future in other states. But we've been fighting and winning in Pennsylvania and Texas and Wisconsin against these restrictive photo ID laws. And it's a great vindication for the people of Pennsylvania who would have been disenfranchised by it.
And what's the purpose? Is it ethnic? Is it partisan? Who are they targeting in these voter laws to keep people from voting?
Well, we only need to look at the facts. There's a disparate impact on the elderly, on students, on young people, on African Americans, and on Latinos, and that's why we're winning. We're fighting back and winning.
Bill Clinton, who's very good at making things simple, as we know, he's done it again this summer. He said this was the most blatant thing. He talked about the Florida example, the most blatant example of voter suppression. He said they're shutting down Sunday before voting because that's when black people go to church and then go on the buses because they don't have cars. I mean, this is so targeted, but you're the expert. What's this mean to you historically that this has been stopped, at least in Pennsylvania?
Look, this is big. I mean, what this means is that all voters in Pennsylvania can go vote. If you got an ID, you can vote. If you don't got one, you can vote. And that's critical right now because, as you heard Turzai said, they were trying to basically steal the race in the state, and given what this state is, steal it for the entire country. But what this also is in line with is that we're starting to turn the tide. You know, we've won in Wisconsin, we've won in Texas, we've got a Republican governor in the Midwest, Snyder, to actually veto one of these bills. We got Governor McDonnell in Virginia also, from the GOP to say, don't even bring it to me or I will veto it. And so folks are starting to come to their senses and see that this isn't simply a Republican thing, it's an extremist thing. And it's really, as so many have said, this is going back to a playbook that was first written right after the Civil War.
But, okay, let me go to Jim Burr now, the chair of the Democratic Party in Pennsylvania. What's this mean on the ground for people voting? I'm still worried. I began to get worried this morning. I was worried about this law. Now I'm a little bit worried that people think the law is still in effect and will be afraid to go vote. It's called, intimidation, not just suppression now.
Well, it was a huge victory today, Chris, like your other guests, and I thank them for their partnership, and I thank everybody for helping us to push this thing back past November 6th. Our game now has transformed somewhat, because there's a portion of this that the judge allowed, that is that the government here in Pennsylvania can still talk about the law, even though it's implemented. So our game, Chris, has shifted. We're going to remind voters that you do not need identification to vote, because I suspect in the next 5 weeks Mr. Corbett, Mr. Romney, Mr. Terzai, Mr. Metcalf, and their friends are going to attempt to create confusion and chaos now that we beat this thing back. So we're going to be just as vigorous now as we have been. And your prior guest on the prior segment talked about anger. Let me tell you something, Chris. There's a lot of angry voters in Pennsylvania, Mitt Romney and Tom Corbett, for this chicanery, and they're going to have a conversation with them at the polls on November the 6th.
Let me ask you, Kathy, why did this creep up on so many people? I mean, I've been making some noise about it, but this is like a multi-state thing, something like 20 or 30 states involved in this, basically all pushed by the Republicans, all pushed to stamping down on the chance of minority people and older people to vote, clearly partisan and ethnic in nature. And here we are. I may be the only one on national television yelling about this thing, but it just seems, as Bill Clinton said beautifully, it's blatant. And yet nobody's been raising hell about it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we're in the nonprofit sector, and we've been doing everything we can to fight back against the biggest wave of voter suppression we've seen since the enactment of the Voting Rights Act in 1965. These types of restrictions are like poll taxes and literacy tests. They have a disparate impact on people of color, and we need to fight back and keep on fighting back. We're very glad for the victory in Pennsylvania, but we hope that the justices around the country will change their mind as well.
Ben, you're in a hero's role in all this, and I really appreciate anything you do for our country continuing this, but it seems I want to ask you something. This seems to be hand in glove with the same kind of dog whistle stuff they're doing to white working class voters. Get them all upset about welfare and food stamps. So you get the blacks so they can't vote, and you get the whites angry, the working class white angry at the blacks so they'll vote Republican. It does seem like a two-pronged effort.
No, that's right. And, race has really been injected into this race in ways that are really insidious, And when you hear somebody talk about folks are too lazy, and knowing that who he's talking about are single moms who are working, who may be in a county that have no DOT, or maybe in a county where the DOT is open one day, or frankly may have a boss that if they have to go back twice. And part of the game here in Pennsylvania was when you went in for a free ID, they ran you through all the hoops to see if you could get a driver's license. And then if that failed, said, oh, by the way, here's a free ID that's much easier to get. And, and it just... look, guys, we got to get back to a place, and frankly, past GOP chairs like Ken Melman have talked about this, where we try to just win on the ideas, where it's not about suppression, it's not about intimidation, it's just running an honest race and cutting bait with these old, nasty tactics that they seem to, drag out whenever they get nervous.
Let me ask you, Jim Byrne, the chair of the party, had the African-American community been emotionally responsive to this? Did they know that they were the target in large part of this whole effort?
Absolutely, Chris. And, we were worried a year ago about finding something to motivate and excite our base, African-American, seniors, students, Hispanics, everybody. The president has been effective this year in doing that, but in a way, I've got to thank Mr. Corbett and Mr. Romney and Terzai and Metcalf for their candor. They called this thing what it was, and that helped act as an accelerant. So, yes. We know what they wanted to do. We know what they were going to try to do. And like I said, we're going to come and send them a message on November the 6th.
Just remember who was the greatest registrar of minority voters in the history of Philadelphia, Frank Rizzo. Because everybody in the city knew who their enemy was. He had the nightclub to prove it, or the nightstick, I should say. Anyway, thank you, Ben Jealous. Congratulations to you, sir, for the NAACP's hard work here. Thank you, Jim Byrne, for I guess it's a partisan victory in a weird way. Anyway, and most importantly, Catherine Culleton-Gonzalez, please keep educating us on these cases of voter suppression around the country. Anyway, up next, what did the far right think America would look like in 2012 when President Obama took office 4 years ago? Where do you hear these projections? This is sci-fi. Their wildest predictions couldn't be further from the truth, fortunately. It's actually sci-fi tends to be true sometimes. Anyway, this